started in a World War II propaganda campaign and eventually became one of the most famous icons in American history. But who exactly was Rosie the Riveter? To start with, it is not really about a woman named Rosie. It's not even about one woman, but about millions. After the United States entered World War II in 1941, the government and industrial leader called upon American women to join force in order to replace men powerless due to military duty. Between 1940 and 1945, the percentage of women in the workforce increased by 67%. Half of these women took on the top jobs. Rosie was first introduced to the public in a song called Rosie the Riveter, which was first introduced in 1943. The song was made famous by a swing band leader called Kay Keyser. Norman Rockwell had heard the song when he made a painting of a riveter in a lunch break inspired in the painting of Prophet Isaiah in Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel ceiling. She rests her foot on a copy of Hitler's Mein Kampf. The riveter gun rests on her hand and the lunchbox clearly reads Rosie. Rockwell's model was a dental hygienist called Mary Keefe. Was there a real Rosie the Riveter? After Rockwell's cover appeared on a newsstand, the press lost no time on casting real-life Rosies. One of the most well-known was Rosie Will Monroe. She was a riveter of B-24 and B-2049 bomber airplanes at Michigan. She appeared in a promotional video, but Rosie the Riveter was bigger than just one woman. She was a symbol of the war. Rosie was a symbol of the hard work and sacrifice of millions. Though Rockwell's depiction was the original Rosie, it is mostly identified with a different image. In 1942, the year before the Rosie song was released, the Westinghouse Power Company commissioned J. Howard Miller to create a promotional poster that would boost morale among its employees. The now famous poster featured a bandana on a woman flexing her muscle under the slogan, "We can do it." Due to copyright infringement, Rockwell's Rosie was not as popular as Miller's. In feminist movements, Rosie's poster was used as a modern symbol of female empowerment. It is now the image most associated with Rosie. From wartime propaganda to a feminist symbol, she is an American symbol.
We know that language is the ability to acquire and use complex systems of communication. First of all, we, as human beings, have the innate capacity for learning language since the day we are born. Language is the primary means by which the knowledge of one generation is passed on to the next. With language, we are socially and culturally connected with others, including others in the past, what leads us to history, area of knowledge that deals with the past, trying to find out what happened from the echoes that remain. The particular language communities in which we grow up, with their fusion of culture and language, influence how we make sense of the world. So does religion, food, beliefs, family, environment, laws. But when do the assumptions, values, and selection of perspectives affect our language inappropriately? Symbolism in language as a part of our community is the use of one thing, an object, an image, a sound, a word, to stand for something else, with a connection between ideas we create according to our own conventions. To what extent does the geographical context of the language community, with its plants and animals, and its particular difficulties and solutions as its people survive in that world, then penetrate its way of thinking? Does the thing we use as symbol clearly represent one idea, or does it gather more ideas for us as we use it? We are dealing with human creativity in constructing meaning, and with ambiguity that annoys some people intensely and delights others. Again, with language, we are not isolated and solitary in our thoughts. In fact, it creates bridges between personal knowledge and shared knowledge. It is clear that language is affected by other ways of knowing, our memories and our emotions, our intuitions and faith, our observations and imaginations, and our process of reasoning when building personal knowledge. So, to what extent do the cultural differences reflected and created by language through symbols influence our perspective on history?
The French Revolution began in 1789 and ended in the late 1790s with the ascent of Napoleon Bonaparte. During this period, French citizens raised and redesigned their country's political landscape, uprooting centuries-old institutions such as absolute monarchy and the feudal system. Women had no political rights in the pre-revolutionary France. They were considered passive citizens, forced to rely on men to determine what was best for them. Just like World War II, the role of women during the French Revolution was important. One example was Olympe de Gouges, who wrote the Regulation of Women and the Female Citizen. The highlights of the revolution were mainly painted in Delacroix's paintings, that were used as propaganda and support of the French Revolution. The most famous painting is The Liberty Leading the People, the most famous image of the French Revolution. It depicts a normal French topless woman holding the French flag in front of the barricade. It is an icon for liberty that represents thousands of women who participated and led the revolution. This image created a huge impact on society. From the Statue of Liberty to the cover of a music album of Coldplay, liberty is an icon for French and human history. The Hundred Years' War had begun in 1337 between France and England. The French population had not recovered its original size since the Black Death of the mid-14th century, and its merchants were isolated from foreign markets. She gave France 9 victories in battle and boosted French morale and paved the way for the final French victory. We are talking about Joan of Arc. She is known to be an icon and hero for the French population. She died at the age of 19 and was proclaimed a saint of the Catholic Church. Joan of Arc has been a popular figure in literature, painting, sculpture, and other cultural works since the time of her death, and many famous writers, filmmakers, and composers have created works about her. Cultural depictions of Joan of Arc have continued in films, theater, television, video games, music, and performances to this day. She has been used repeatedly in propaganda as a symbol for women's courage. Just as we saw on Rosie Riveter, she was an icon to American history and to Caucasian women. But was Rosie an icon for everyone? Did she represent the strength of all women? For example, African American women during World War II were not wanted for the jobs. Even if they did work, they paid them 2 times less than Caucasian women. To the American population, it is meaningful. But what about a German woman or a Chinese woman? Will it mean the same for them? We construct our perspectives based on our culture. The same happens with liberty guiding the people. This image and icon means to Western culture, democracy and freedom. But does it represent the same for someone from Saudi Arabia or Indonesia? Probably not as it means to a person from France or the United States. And Joan of Arc. She emblems many of the feminist Western ideals, but does she embrace Eastern ideals? So, as we have seen through these real-life situations, we construct our perspectives based on the culture we live in. Because history deals with culture, we may not have an entire objective perspective. As we can see, any communication, whether it is a conversation, research, or newspaper, demands some sort of degree of interpretation. The act of interpreting and having perspective lies on the personal knowledge, which is a type of knowledge we acquire as our own. The cultural differences influence our perspective and history. This influence comes from symbols and language.